What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, continuing my deep dive and nearing the end of my deep dive, quite sadly. I think there's 4 or 5 more releases left, and I've done all but one of them because they're all sort of archival releases that didn't see the light of day until 2023, 2024. So this might be the penultimate Neil Young studio review, I think. Kind of sad. It is world record. His 45th official studio release dropped in 2022. This one's with Crazy Horse. Rick Rubin produced it, the only one he's produced of Neil Young's. It's called world record, but it is very much a record of the world, as in the natural world, as in Neil's experience of and living in it, both nature and cars. There's a whole song devoted to cars called Chevrolet. It is the 15-minute and 15-second monster Crazy Horse sort of guitar drenched epic you would expect on an album like this. It is the centerpiece of the album. It is absolutely fantastic. But world record in that it could be a world record for this band, playing together again and just kind of doing the same thing over and over again, and yet still having it be incredibly successful and incredibly enjoyable. I think as we go forward in time, this is going to be considered the third part of let's call it the Colorado trilogy, in which he moved to Colorado. There's a recording studio. They recorded Colorado there. They recorded Barn there in the barn in Colorado. And apparently this was written while he was walking around his property experiencing nature. These are all very much lyrically and in many ways sonically, musically of the same set piece. This one, we're dipping a little bit more into that sort of late era Bob Dylan, retro rock, 40s, 50s type, flirting with lounge type rock, but that kind of vibe on some of these songs, that sort of softer, I'm getting older, and so this music appeals to me more type vibe that seems to happen, happen with Dylan. It's happening with Neil now. But we also have some heaviness and some weirdness. There's a lot of pump organ on here, and it's just there, and it's with a harmonica and an electric guitar and like these weird just drum rhythms the whole thing at times feels like Neil's like, I'm just going to force these instruments to get along and hope it works. Apparently it was recorded live and then immediately transferred, recorded live, then they immediately took it and put it in digital and did stuff with it from there. But every song, or almost every song, there's a second or two of silence where you can hear in many instances you can hear Neil count in the song. There's silence at the end of the songs when you can tell it's live and they're capturing that sort of dead air after a performance. At the end of Chevrolet, which is the 15-minute song, Neil goes, he says, "That was fun." You can kind of hear him really softly say it. So these are live performance, and there's a rawness to them. There's that Neil Young, unpolished sort of, that energy, like you really are just walking into his barn and they're just jamming out these songs. That's kind of the way it feels. There's that unpolished vibe. There's that, if they took this material and went into the studio and worked it for a couple months, this might have the same, maybe have even a little more power than it has. But at the same time, the raggedness of this and the sort of spontaneity of this late era Neil vibe, it lends the album some charm. So my only complaint, and it's actually both a complaint at the same time, I think the thing that ultimately works about the album, is I do think it starts off rather slow. Some of those more old-timey songs, those little slower ballady numbers, the first 2 of those songs, we kind of build in energy until we get to the heavier rock stuff. And then once we get that rock stuff, we have a couple more of the slower, more acoustic songs. And when we return to those, it does kind of feel like, all right, we're taking a breather before we get to the heavier stuff. And so I think the album is a little bit unbalanced in that for this particular outing, I really do like the electric, heavier pump organ, guitar, frenzy type stuff better than I like the softer stuff. But I also think that listening to the entire album from start to finish and going from this softer, more retro, more traditional rock type vibe to things getting weird, and then things getting heavy, and then things getting a little, I don't know if alternative is the right word, but a little more experimental, and then dropping a 15-minute just jam as your penultimate song, with the last song being a short, quiet little reprise. The sequencing of the album is perfect. And I do think the forest is much more powerful than the individual trees, though there are a couple individual trees that, raise the property value for everybody. It's a fun listen. It's in no way near bad. I think at times it's just a little too, all right, this sounds like Neil's getting old. This sounds like Crazy Horse is getting old. I'm not at that age where I want this retro rock thing. So I'm still kind of like, all right, this is where they're at. I'm going to respect that. But I like that Neil mixes it up as the album goes on. In a way, and I'm going to get to the songs in a second, it kind of sounds like the band from like Dylan's The Band, that band. They're sort of Americana, or maybe even the band itself, on like psychedelic drugs, only it's not the early stage where they're like relentlessly experimental and everything's like really fun, nor is it like the peak stage where like it's just kind of chaos and ideas are flying all over the place. But it's almost like the come down stage where they've been through this journey. They're not quite as reactive as they might be at the peak of it, but they still want to like push it every once in a while. And both maybe what Rick Rubin is doing production wise, or what Neil is doing by forcing all these just different instruments together, is giving it that like, we're still going to make this last, but let's be experimental in these subtle little ways. It's fun. I don't know. I like this album. Opens up with Love Earth, which is your very retro Dylan vibe, some piano, soft type, breezy rock. It's like a Sunday afternoon in a country bar, and the band's not trying to get anybody too worked up. Maybe somebody's slow dancing a little bit. You can still talk over your meal. A nice, gentle opener. Overhead is next, which a little more upbeat. We're still in like the band style Americana, some piano-driven stuff, kind of bouncy Americana country rock. I Walk With You, parentheses, Earth Ringtone, is the first time we're getting some heavy guitar action, getting a little that Crazy Horse plod in the drums. And I mean plod is like in a positive way. It's not dragging, but if it is dragging, it's purposeful and it's meant to. And I like it. It's slow, it's sparse, but it has these bursts of heaviness, even though we're still kind of, the basis is still kind of this acoustic Americana, but there is this really nice heaviness that just kind of lingers throughout the whole thing. And it's about walking with you and just sort of like being grateful for being alive and walking on this earth and appreciate all that we do. There's a lot of earth love here, a lot of world love here. Next is This Old Planet Changing Days, another Americana sort of jaunty piano ballad type thing, a little upbeat, but not too upbeat, kind of ballady. It's about you're not alone on this old planet, so you have that. Then at this point, we get to like the really good stuff. The world is in trouble now. Pump organ all over the place. It's weird. It's kind of poppy. It's kind of funky. It's kind of odd. It's just noisy at times. The production decisions are fantastic. The use of pump organ is fantastic. Just a weird little song, but it's kind of heavy. It's Crazy Horse with that sort of, this is your like experimental, kind of psyche edge, but in a Americana way. Then we get Break the Chain, which is like pretty much a straight on kind of like Crazy Horse type rocker. We get some feedback in there. Like the first 35 seconds, you know it's going to be heavy and the drums come in, but things aren't really coalescing for a while. And finally we hit that like that steady groove that we're going to like ride for the majority of the song around the 35-second mark. It's ragged, it's sloppy, it's chaotic. The solo is sloppy. It feels live. It feels raw. It's the first sort of purely what we imagine a Neil Young Crazy Horse album to sound like. This is when they hit that stride right here. Next is The Long Day Before. We kind of bring it down. We got some waltzy energy here. The lyrics are kind of cool. It almost seems like you have this anti-media, like there's like a big conspiracy that's trying to make us not realize things about each other or love, or there's a little bit of like push away the world and just connect with humans type vibe to this nice short little song. Walking on the Road to the Future, pump organ again, harmonica again, really nice and bouncy and folky. It's, we're walking in the world. It's just, What do we want in the world as we're walking into the future? We don't want war, we want peace. No more war, we want peace. This really kind of like very folky, let's look to the future and work together as humans type vibe. The protest yet proactively protest vibe that Neil's been writing, for decades now. The Wonder Won't Wait, absolutely amazing song. Pump organ, some really weird instrumentation, some electric guitar in here. It just feels like it's like this marching kind of heavy groove. And as the song goes on, more and more instruments just kind of join in. Like, all right, we're going to go with you as we march forward to this. Really just neat sounds, neat noises, excellent energy. And it's a little, I don't know if it's chaotic, but it does have this sense of like everybody just join in when you want to, like an unorganized feel, even though everybody's moving in the same direction. And then right after that, we drop into Chevrolet. 15 minutes of guitar and noise and lyrics about how cars played a part in Neil's life throughout his entire life, finding out he was going to have a kid in a car. Great guitar solos. Neil keeps it interesting in every sort of extended solo. Some nice use of like effects and a little bit of feedback at times. Super tasty. And it's like the quickest 15 minutes I've ever heard in my life. It is essentially the last song on the album because the actual song after this is like a minute and a half of like this really low key like reprise of what is it, This Old Planet. Really not much happens to it. It's really, really mellow. This just feels like the entire album has been leading up to this. And that when we get here, it's like, let's just sit back and enjoy this. It's almost like the whole like cold dip bath into the lukewarm water into the hot tub thing that they do in like hot springs out here, where you first submerge yourself in like complete ice water, then you like warm up a little bit in like a normal temperature, and then you get that hot tub at the end. This is that hot tub at the end, and you don't want it to stop, you don't want it to go away. Yeah, it's a little bit intense and you're sweating a little bit, but yeah, that's what the whole process is supposed to be like. It is just absolutely fantastic. The performance is fantastic. There's a rawness to it. Just beautiful sequencing of this album. And then we get to close out This Old Planet. I really enjoyed this. I do have to admit, though, every time I put it on, I'm not the biggest fan of some of the slower stuff on here. I think as a whole, the slower stuff emphasizes and highlights the strengths of the stronger stuff, at least for me. But I do like the way it's constructed. I do like the balance that's provided. It's really well sequenced. Crazy Horse sounds fantastic. Neil sounds good. Yeah, I mean, it fits perfectly well within the Neil sort of catalog. And I think it works really well. It's like part 3 of this Colorado trilogy. Yeah, it's a good, having Chevrolet being the last song of this trilogy, and I mean, really, because that short little one it's just a reprise. It all works. I don't know. I like it. If I were to rank the songs on this album, that is what they would look like. I do have Chevrolet at number 1, both its placement on the album. I think this is one of the better sort of latter half, really long jams that he's dropped. He's dropped some pretty good ones, and I think this ranks up there with some of the ones off like Psychedelic Pill, which probably the best one so far. Really good performances, and those top songs up on that list, The Wonder Won't Wait, The World's in Trouble Now, Break the Chain, the heavier, more aggressive things on this album work really, really well. And why they sound like Crazy Horse stuff while also sounding like he's trying to redefine the Crazy Horse sound at the same time, keeping it somewhat fresh for those of us who have been, soaking in it for 40 plus years, 50 plus years at this point. And then if I were to rank this album among all the others, despite all the love I gave it, I still have it way down at number 30. I have to acknowledge that it's really 4 songs that are lifting this up, and the other stuff is just not that bad. And I do think the other stuff, either just from start to finish are more consistent, or start to finish give me the energy I want and don't verge on this Bob Dylan, I'm getting old, so I'm doing all these kind of oldies type vibes. Neil does it. I'm a little more engaged with Neil doing it than I am with Bob, but still, we don't need it when you can rock as hard as you do on like Break the Chain Just rock like that, Neil. All right. All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's not in the top 20, and nor is it in the bottom. It's right there at 30. All right. I'm done. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know your thoughts on this album, on other Neil Young albums, things I might have missed, all that kind of stuff. And peace. Talk to you later.